All right, welcome everybody. We're here with Aaron, and we're doing a town hall for the Illuvium Arena. If you guys haven't checked out the most recent blog, it's in the announcements in Discord. Otherwise, there will be, if you're watching this live on stream, there will be a little QR code here. You guys can go ahead and just scan that QR code, and it will take you directly to this Arena Dev blog. It's a dev blog focused around, the upcoming improvements coming to Gauntlet and Arena in general. And it's very exciting new dev blog. I'm super stoked for all these improvements that are coming. I think it was some well-received feedback from people that saw this. So yeah, we're gonna jump right into it. You can check out that dev blog, but that's mostly what this town hall is going to cover. We're gonna try and stay on topic for arena-based topics. I know people have a ton of questions about other things, and we'll have another town hall with Kieran and maybe Aaron as well, in the future to cover a lot of those topics as well. But right now, let's welcome Aaron onto the camera here. How's it going, Aaron?
G'day. Thank you
Yeah. No
for
problem
setting
at
this
all.
up for us.
But yeah, so I mean, do you want to give, like, I guess we'll start it out with a brief overview, and then we'll kind of go into questions for anybody that hasn't read the dev blog, and like your thoughts on writing the dev blog and all of that involved with it.
Yeah, sure. So the main thrust of it is that there are a large number of features that we are building into the game at the moment. These are the features that we think will take it from something which is definitely more of a proof of concept through to a fully finished product. As a lot of you guys know, we launched as a public beta. Once we get all of these features in and polished, then Arena would not be considered a beta anymore. They cover a large number of things, and it will take a fair bit of time for us to get it 100% right. And on top of it taking a bit of time to get those features right, we do need to do some internal testing to make sure that the stuff that we're building is super fun. And then we need to do some external testing with you guys as well, making sure that you find it super fun as well. We've managed to hone Arena from what it was 2.5 years ago to where it is now. I think most people would agree it's in a much better state now than what it was, but there's still a long way to go. So the blog was mainly about showing the roadmap that we have, what we envisage for Arena, and it mostly is about finding our place in the marketplace. What is our point of difference? What makes our game something that people would want to play compared to other games? And we're really leveraging the things that people love about what we do, while at the same time going through and just trying to axe out everything that people are not happy with, or at the very least improve it to the point where it feels like a really polished experience. So it's about 6 separate features that we'll be releasing. Again, as we release these features, it could be that there's feedback that comes back, and it might mean that we need to scrap 1 or 2 of them or adjust them. So don't think that this is like set in stone. As always, we need to make sure that you guys are super happy with it. And more importantly, we need to make sure that when you tell your mates about this cool game, that when they come in, they stick. Right, and that requires more polish, more fun, and overall a much better experience than what we're giving players at the moment. And we think we can do it.
My only issue with it all is every time I learn the game, you guys go and change it. Like I'm getting first and second now, and then now you guys are gonna go change it, and I'm gonna have to start all over again. So that's my only gripe.
I will say this: once we have all these features in place, you'll be way happier coming first or second all of the time, because if you are getting first or second quite often with all of these new features, then it means that you really have truly mastered the game. One of the issues at the moment is that it's mainly about being able to understand what are some of the strong compositions that are available, and there's not enough strategic complexity in the game. And when I say complexity, I know some people get a little bit scared because they think, oh, we don't want it to be too hard to understand. What I really mean is the same sort of complexity that you would get out of any other, easy to learn, hard to master game. That is, as you get further and further down the track, little tiny things can help improve you. And one of the biggest things with these updates is that there's going to be a large amount of input randomness to the games, which means that you have to navigate through, what region am I playing in? How does that affect the way that I'm supposed to play? What are the cards that have been dealt to me? So at the moment, if you want a whole bunch of matches in a row, it might start to feel a little bit boring. Maybe it doesn't to some people, but I think that pros would start to feel like it's been solved, and it would only stop being solved when we release a new patch. But with the new version of the game, it's not the sort of thing that is like technically solvable. Each individual match is something that you've got to solve while you're playing it, and that to me is the really exciting part about this genre. It isn't the most noob friendly of genres out there. I'm sure that there's some people that would play a first person shooter or something else and be able to pick it up a little bit quicker, but it really has a lot of accessibility once you've played even just a couple of games. Because remember, part of these updates that we're doing is soon after they're done, we start to roll out the mobile launch, and the mobile launch is going to allow people to play it any time of day. You could be just in bed at night and just open it up and play a quick game. You could be on the train or whatever. And one of the really cool things about this type of game is, even though it does have a little bit of complexity in learning how to be really good at it, it is super accessible. Right. And we want to make sure that it is that way. Some people are going to want to get in there and play with just like a single composition and just that's what they love. They love Atlas, so they're going to go for some sort of a water or tsunami comp, something like that. Other people are going to be really into the pro side of it and want to get into a little bit more depth into it. But it's the sort of game where the number of actions that you do per second is not particularly high, and that means a lot to accessibility. It means that you can be on a train. It means, hey, you could be at work and you just alt tab between what you're doing and play. And once we get those features in and get our marketing push done for this new launch, you'll start to see the player base tick up and up and up. Queue times will come down, and you'll just be able to play anytime. That's really what we're trying to do with this update, is get the accessibility to a maximum so that we can get the largest number of people into the ecosystem. Once they're there, we think that a certain percentage of them will migrate across to the other games, the collection, all that sort of stuff, and we can really start to put the pedal to the
If
metal.
we go mobile, that's going to be a major issue for my sleep patterns, because even when I mean, being in America, especially on the West
Mhm.
Coast, like most of these guys, or at least on the team, are in Europe and Australia. And then it's like I'm laying in bed and Kieran's like, let's play a game. And I'm like, well, I had to get out of bed to do that. So it'll just be that much harder or
Yeah.
easier, but yes, harder on my sleep if we're on mobile. But I'm looking forward to that,
Yeah.
definitely. Um,
Yeah, we don't want you to have to get up from anywhere that you are. Just keep your phone on you and then
Yep.
just be plugged into the game
Yep.
all day. That's the
Definitely.
idea.
Well, so yeah, like I guess you've covered quite a bit there. How about, I guess one of the major overarching questions is, how does this release schedule look? As far as when these features will
Mhm.
start to roll out, will they roll out together? Will it be like one major thing? Will we be doing it on testnet for people to test out, with us? I guess those main
Mhm.
questions.
Yep. Uh, it's definitely going to be rolling out piecemeal. There'll be like a feature dropped and then another feature dropped. We have cut back our release cadence for major releases to once a month. We've done that because internally it is a fair amount of work to do a big release. So it'll probably be every couple of weeks that we do a balance update. Whereas for major releases like new features and stuff like that you would have to download a new version of the game, they're going to be once a month. That allows us to make sure that we're spending most of our time on development rather than on fixing up any issues to do with the release. But also, one of the first thing that we'll roll out is effectively a major update to the way the game is sort of manufactured on our side. We currently employ a way of doing things which when we started the project, it made sense for what we were going to do. And unfortunately, it stopped making sense somewhere along the way. And I mean, I've got to take the blame for it. We probably should have pivoted to it a lot sooner. It would have helped us to develop a lot faster. But at the time, we had, really, really tight deadlines that we wanted to get to. And the idea of sort of stepping back from that and spending a lot of time re-architecting things just didn't make much sense. Plus, we were mainly focused on Ascendant at the time, and Ascendant is a game mode that doesn't really require so much of what it is that we're trying to do. But we made the choice at the end of last year that we would start working on the new architecture. We're nearly complete with that. Obviously, it's got to go through some testing internally, but once we get that done, a lot of the other features will be a lot easier for us to implement. And more importantly, a lot of things like the crashes that people are experiencing, some of the desyncs and stuff like that, all of that will go away. It will become a lot easier for us to build, and the pace will, massively improve. One of the things that we did is we took a large number of the team from Overworld to move to Arena and work, and they're going to keep doing that until we get Arena into a really, really good state. So at the moment, the vast majority of the people on the team are only working on one of two things. One is accessibility and onboarding. So that is everything from the website to monetization and things like that, the way that cosmetics work. Just getting that whole process to be a lot more streamlined and simple. And then everybody else is working on Arena. It's not absolutely everyone, but it's as many people as we can possibly get to work on it. And the upshot of that is that we are getting it done a lot quicker than we would have. And then the trade-off is that later on those people will go back and work on the new MMO Lite that we're working on as well. So it will be rolled out in steps. One of the things that I think people should be aware of is that when we do this, because we've got this overarching vision of what the final product is going to look like, just keep in mind balance might be a little bit off in a couple of those early patches because we're not balancing for only 2 out of the 6 features, we're balancing for all of them. So if we don't have some of those features that might impact the way the balancing works, it could be that the Ranger is a little bit undercooked for a while, and we're just going to suck that up and say it is what it is, test out the product as it is. If we were to spend 2 weeks with the whole game design team going and balancing around half of the features, we'd be effectively wasting our time because then a week later we'll have one of the other features ready to go, and then we start deploying it in the next month, and it all gets put up in the air. So we'll be spending a lot more of our time focusing at least internally on making sure that it all is balanced around the whole thing being completed. And in the meantime, I'm sure that people will have a lot of fun finding out what are the crazy overpowered strategies when not everything is there. And for that reason, I think that there is still a little bit of fun to be had in the game, but just keep in mind that we are focused on the final release, even if that does happen over a couple of months.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm speaking about all these features that are coming. I guess we'll go into each of these features and you can kind of give a more in-depth explanation about them, and I'll just go in the order of the blog to make it easy in case people are happen to be reading it now and following along. The first one, which I'm super excited about, is this region selection thing. And I'm sure, are these things in the pictures where it shows like +5 HP drone every 7 rounds? Is that like just placeholders, or is that kind of just to give an idea, I guess, of how region selections will work? And maybe explain it, because not everyone knows TFT. Like, I know it from TFT, but I don't think everyone does.
Yep. So these are 3 that we're planning on putting in. But again, there's still some internal testing with these that we have to do. Is something that we are at least currently planning. It doesn't mean that those will go in exactly as they are, right? It could be that we work out from some of our testing that, maybe Crystal Shores one is not going to work. The Crystal Shores 3 composites, we've actually changed that now to a hybrid where you get some basic and you get some primary synergies and you get some composite synergies. That one I think will probably be the most controversial. I know that in other games these sort of things are definitely very controversial to pro players, because it in some of those games it takes away a little bit of the I guess you would call it the agency of the player. I think that in our game, I think it leverages it perfectly. So we're going to give it a shot. But it's not about any individual one. The general idea with region selection is it's really important that the game feels fresh every time, right? One of the biggest issues that we had with Ascendant is that it was absolutely not fresh, because most, or if not all, of the decision making that you did was before the game began. Now, for card games like Magic the Gathering and things like that, there's some other things that they have in place that allow it to work, and I still think that there's a way for Ascendant to work, but we tried to go, I think, a little bit too much for a hybrid between those sort of really static type games and a more dynamic type of game like what Gauntlet is now, and it just didn't work. But in these more dynamic ones, what you absolutely need is for the game to feel fresh. So when you go and go into your lobby and get ready to play, we need you to not understand or not really know exactly what you're going to get. Regions are the first part about that. It leverages our world, our existing lore, and says like, okay, we've got these different places around the world. They're different in different ways. And like, for example, Brightland Steps, we're planning that to be to play a bit more econ focused, but also it just matches what Brightland Steps is all about. When we developed all of the regions, the general idea is that there is one emotion for each region, right? And the emotion for Brightland Steps is happiness, right? That's what it was always designed to be around. That's what we wanted to elicit from the player base. So when you go into that one, you should feel that sense of like, okay, it's not just like stressy straight away. It's something where I can be a little bit more chill with it, and that should affect your play style, right? That's why we've tried to make these changes to the game match up with what we're doing in Overworld and with the new MMO Lite. So it shakes up the game. Now, it's not like crazy. It's not going to change the whole way that the game is played. A pro player may disagree a little bit and say it's quite a big change, but I think for most of the audience, they'll feel like it's a good thing to be able to have it be a little bit of a shake up each time you go into it. The blog talks about like voting on it. What we'll probably do to speed up the development and also to get a little bit more feedback on how people enjoy each of the regions is we'll probably make it completely random and you won't have a choice. It's just a little bit easier for us to get that out to you straight away. And then for probably a couple of patches, we'll get some data on, what are people enjoying? What are the things that people really like? What do they don't like? And we'll adjust the effects based on that. But the long-term goal is to have a way for you to go into the match picking what you think is the most fun region to go to, and then some combination of randomness and what you've picked with what all of the other people in the match have picked will determine what region you play. If everybody decides that Brightland Steps is just by far the most fun to play, then everybody votes on that, and it'll almost always be the case that you'll play Brightland Steps. If that is the case, and we're finding that one of them is just by far the standout, at that point, we'll have some really good data, and it could mean that what that region is needs to be just a keystone feature of the game as it stands, right? We might incorporate that to be, baseline Gauntlet, and then everybody else, will, because they're picking it, we'll change what that effect is, and that way we can shake it up a little bit. So it really gives us a chance to get some feedback from the community as to what you guys like. But the general idea of what regions is everybody goes through an obelisk, and you end up somewhere. Each region has a little bit of a twist on it, and away you go. I didn't see any questions around it, but we want people to be able to pick the regions as cosmetics. So at least for now, we're not planning on showing you the different cosmetic boards depending on what you've gone, what has been picked, because obviously you're going to have your own cosmetic boards, but that's something that we're definitely open to discussing with the community. If they would prefer it to be the default is my board looks like the region, and it only changes if you've got a particular cosmetic at your loadout.
I'm definitely looking forward to to some more interesting features like this. Like, I mean, like all of this stuff in the blog, I think is we're gonna go over more, and I think it's super cool because like when I got into TFT, which was when I started here, a lot of these things are kind of part of TFT, and I always thought they were super interesting, made the game different every time. So yeah, super exciting that this is coming. And yeah, so I guess next up is with these weapons, like currently the weapon system is kind of difficult to get at least like stage 3 weapons, like I've very rarely gotten stage 3
Mhm.
weapons. I know people have mixed feelings about like they're hard to balance, I'm sure, to get into the shop, like we kind of just added them recently. So it's we're going to be changing it again. So yeah, we can go over, the new weapon system and how you see that working out.
Yeah. So when we looked at the features that we wanted to have in, the one of the major differences between us and everyone else in the auto battler space is, we've got this ranger that has some sort of like a synergistic connection with the alluvials and with the drone, and we really wanted to leverage that. So we knew we wanted to put that into the game. We didn't want it to be a game where you just are placing alluvials down. In the overworlds, the eventual plan was always to have you fighting with the alluvials by your side, having a bond, having it be like definitely a lot of teamwork, and that's the direction that we're taking the MMO. But we wanted to keep as much of that in the other games as we possibly could, right? I've said from the very beginning, the ranger is you in our world. That's your avatar. That's who you are. We wanted you to be able to customize it and really make a connection with it. We're doing a lot of work on the cosmetic side of that to make it feel more like you get to be you. And part of that was we've got to get the ranger in. But at the same time, we knew that we were just about to start doing this major overhaul of the engine, and we wanted to test out getting the ranger in before we started doing that work so that there would be a bit of a shakeup and a new feature. So we did what was the fastest way to get it in, which was to make both the weapons and the suits be cards, right? It wasn't that we thought that was definitely going to be by far the best way to do it. We weren't 100% sure. We did test it internally. It was definitely a bit of a surprise to some of us because a lot of the game design team found it to be reasonably, straightforward. You just pick your weapons and suits just like you pick your alluvials. There is a little bit of upkeep to it, and I'll say that it's on me to not have realized that a lot of people found it a little bit too much, right? They don't want to be thinking about both the alluvials that they've got to assemble onto their team and the weapons and the suits. Fair enough, right? We had 3 potential ways that we were going to implement it. This is going back probably 6 months. We went with the one that we could get out to the community the fastest, which was to make them cards, add a few more slots, and away we go. When we got that feedback that people said it's too much, we don't want to be thinking about it, I started to go back to the original plans that we'd had about like how do we implement these, and this is what that is, right? So now you'll select a weapon that there'll be a particular time at level 3 is the current setup where you'll get a weapon, and we have 15 of them in the game. Eventually we would like to expand that out to be about 25, just purely because then that covers every combination of affinity and class, basic affinity and classes. And it's another input randomness to the game, right? You don't get to have the same weapon every single game. So that's one of the major differences between what you've got now and what will be the case. Is right now, if you want, you just go and buy whatever you want and you'll be able to get it. Yes, it is definitely very hard to get stage 3 stuff, but you can pick whichever line you want and go for it. But it's just not that interesting, right? We want the ranger to feel like it's something special. And so we decided that we would allow you to pick 3 out of 15 or 3 out of 25. So again, every game is going to be a little bit different. If you really, really love Triune Blade, you're probably not going to get it every match. It's going to be 1 out of 5 or whatever, but that's okay because it allows you to pick different strategies. It allows you to think about how can I make new compositions and stuff like that. And for people that have played a few matches, it'll definitely make the game feel fresher every time, right? The other big thing that we wanted to do with this is I sat down and I was like, okay, we want to get the ranger in, but why, right? There's a lore reason, there's a vibe reason to it, but what's the game design reason? What's the thing that makes it interesting strategically? And the unfortunate reality of it was that there's nothing, right? Once you've got your ranger in there and you put the weapon and the suit on them, they're effectively an alluvial. There's really no difference. And that's a really big missed opportunity, because if you're going to add a different thing into the game, such as your own avatar, there's got to be something that makes it stand out, that makes it have some good elements to it and, some trade-offs. Alluvials, you can always get the ones you want. Maybe you low roll and you can't get ram fire, but you probably, if you really want to, you're probably going to be able to get ram for every match, right? With the ranger, we want that to be the trade-off. You just can't get the same, Ranger configuration every game. It's going to be random, and there's a lot of randomness there, and you've got to find your way to the really cool strategies inside of there. But more importantly, we wanted it to be much more configurable. So we broke it apart and we said the weapon is still going to give you the Omega, right? But then as you level up, we want that Omega to change depending on what these weapon amplifiers are, right? So no longer will it be just, it's a set, stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, and it just gets stronger with the levels. Now you get to make it like properly configurable, right? It could be that your weapon is a really, really strong single target damage, and you get a weapon upgrade that turns it into AoE. Like that could be really cool, especially if you pair it up with, the ability to regain energy faster. It could be that you have a stun and it makes the stun last a lot longer, right? So now your ranger becomes a stun bot. It's not going to do all that much damage, but it's going to disable one unit for a significant portion of the fight. If you position them in the right way, that could change the way that the fight goes. So the whole point of this one is to allow it to be like really, really configurable. And by breaking apart the synergies and effectively the augments that the ranger can get from the weapon itself, it allows us to do that. A alluvial is always going to be one particular way, and there's not really anything that you can do about it. You can't do much besides enhancing their Omega. The ranger itself, you can change it in weird and wonderful ways, which will take a long time for people to master and work out what are the best strategies. And once you find, what are some of the best combos to pick, you're not going to be able to pick them every time, right? We're planning on having, somewhere in the vicinity of like 700 different combinations per weapon, and all the different features that go into that. You can't do that every game. So you're going to have to navigate in that space and find out what works for you. And it'll be about, some of the games you might high roll and get some really cool thing. And then other games you might have to like really strategize. Okay, maybe my ranger isn't going to be the carry. Maybe it's got to be more of a support. All of these will need to be balanced so that individually the components are all useful. None of them shouldn't be useful, but when you combine them together with the weapon, there is absolutely going to be the case that certain combinations are more effective than others, just like there's certain augments and augment combinations that are more effective on different sets of alluvials. Each augment should be powerful in its own right, but part of that power is knowing who do I put it on, what is the configuration, what do I put with it, where do I put that unit in terms of the balancing and stuff like that, in terms of positioning. It'll be the same with the ranger, right? If you get two that don't really synergize that well, it's not going to be as good as if you get two that you can really, work for your composition.
Yeah, I'm not going to be able to play my Mystic Inferno staff, every game, because that's currently how I'm winning. So
yeah, no, that can't be the case. It's got to be that, and it also can't be the case that if something pops up, you just auto win, right? That also won't be the case. Everything should be counterable, and part of this is that we're making a lot of things powerful in the game. The overarching theme of these updates is let them cook. We want you to cook up some crazy
definitely
stuff.
Looking forward to that. It definitely feels like more of a progression thing too. As you progress through the levels, you can go different routes with your weapon. So definitely something cool to look forward to.
For the record, I'm definitely at odds with a lot of the team on how you should be able to upgrade these weapons. The way that I had designed this system was that it would be at particular level thresholds, so that it was more, you had a little bit more agency with it. Everyone will get the choice of the actual weapon that they get at the same time, just purely because of the way that the leveling system will work. But getting the first and second weapon amplifiers, my plan is for it to be based on getting to those levels, which means you have to like strategically choose. Do you want to spend those credits to level up and make the ranger more powerful straight away? Or do you want to save those credits to make your team comp of alluvials around you a lot stronger by trying to find, those stage threes? A lot of the other people on the design team would prefer it to be round based, so that everybody gets it at the same time. There's a little bit of a conflict internally on that. I'm not super strong on it, but just letting everybody know that it could end up being released as a round based system rather than it being a level based system.
Yeah, I'm
Either
not
way,
sure I
I'm
have a
sure it'll be
preference. I
fun.
think when we first spoke about it, I said levels make sense, but I don't really have a preference. I guess we'll have to test it and see.
Play testing will tell. My major reason for it is having a little bit more agency of when to do it, and also part of these updates is that there are going to be a decent amount of screens that pop up to you at regular intervals, and if it's something that pops up for everyone at the same time, it's hard for us to not sort of add extra time to it so that everybody can choose. And that can make the game go a little bit long. So one of the advantages of doing it level based is that we can keep the games relatively shorter. The complexity of it is that people need to know that when they press that level button, that as soon as they level up to say level 6 and 8, a screen will then pop up. It'll be asynchronous, meaning that the round will just keep on going as it is, and you'll have a little like separate timer that says like choose your weapon or choose your amplifier. And that allows us, because it's asynchronous, it allows us to just say, hey, you can still move your units around, you can do all that sort of stuff, you can blah blah blah, but you can't shop at the same time. And yeah, but at the end of the day, they both seem good. I can definitely see the team's points, and we'll
Yeah,
test it
gonna
out
have to make
and see
some
how it
quick
goes.
decisions. I think I'm. Yeah,
There's some decisions in the game at the moment that we feel like one of the big things is we've got to make sure the game feels really fun. And from a quality of life perspective, there's a couple of points in the game which are really slow and unfun and not good. And we're totally changing that so that it'll all happen a lot quicker. And then there's other things that really should have a little bit more time to make the decision. And at the moment you don't, and it feels like you're a little bit rushed. So getting the pacing of the game into a better state is definitely one
yeah.
of the
I
big
mean,
things that we're
time-wise,
doing.
it feels pretty good right now to me. Like it's not too long. It's just about right. I mean, when I'm winning more often, it's a good 45 minutes, I think. But if you're losing pretty quick, it's pretty quick to get back in. So, um,
Yeah, I mean it's not terrible. It's just it's the length of the game at the moment. I would say is maybe just a little bit on the long side. I'd like to cut it down a bit, but because we're adding all of these extra things into the game, it can be hard to cut that down significantly. But what I'm trying to do is to not extend it where possible. But really, the more important thing is that there is currently in the game a bunch of dead time that will absolutely not be there in the future. And I think that that'll make people feel like the game flies by a lot faster and it'll flow a lot better. So it might not change anything to do with the strategy, but it will change how people feel with the game, especially new players will hopefully not feel too rushed at times and then not feel, too much
yeah.
like things are going a bit slow.
All right. Well, the next feature that we can jump into is one that I think a lot of people have, been wanting back, I guess, to an extent, which is bonding. And if you missed bonding, it was where you could, attach your Ranger's affinity your or get an affinity from your alluvial essentially, and that's upgrading your ranger. So will it be kind of the same method, like we can go into bonding now, and how you plan that to work?
Yeah, it's largely the same as what it was, right? We don't want to change it too much. We do think that a lot of people enjoyed it. Where we're putting most of our focus, number one, as I said, bonding now will play a really significant part in the strategy of the game, because remember, the weapon that you get is only going to have the primary affinity and class. This is where we're allowing the player to get any combo of composite synergy in the game, right? If you really feel like you need to go down that steam route, you can. There should be a way, based on the weapon that you have, that you can sort of get into any combination that works for that weapon, right? It'll definitely be the case that you can do that. The only thing that won't be perfectly there at the start is there's not every weapon combination going to be in the game at the start. So, but that's just a minor point. The strategy of bonding will be much more important. And then the second element that we're looking to fix is that it wasn't intuitive, and it was a little bit hard to see what was going on and what the effects are. So most of the effort that we're going to do with it is to make it be a lot quicker, a lot easier to break the bond, a lot easier to see who you're bonded to, what you're going to get by bonding, et cetera. And we're really using it as an opportunity to teach people the game, right? When you drag the alluvial over the ranger, it's going to pop up and show you effectively like this plus this equals that, right? This plus this equals, and you'll be able to understand a lot better what's going on in the game just by our tooltips and the UI that we have. One of the advantages that we've got now of having more people working on Arena is that we can get them to be doing those quality of life improvements. It's so hard. We want to get features out to the community, but then at the same time, the faster we get our features, the less time we have to really make them pop and work on the user interface and stuff like that. So sometimes they can come out feeling a little bit undercooked. We don't want to do that anymore. We'd rather have people working on both the features and then other people coming in behind them and making sure that the polish of those features is exceptional. So there's not much to say about it. Anyone who knows will get a very good idea of what we're trying to do with it, but I'm pretty sure everyone will see it as an improvement on what we got at the moment.
I'm assuming this image from the blog is just is that I think it was just concept art from Roger. Yeah, oh yeah, it says bonding concept. So, but I mean, you can even see there that's an improved look at what we had from bonding before, where you didn't really know what you were going to get unless, like, I still look at things to determine what fighter and bulwark does, just because I don't always remember on the fly. So
yeah, and there's little things that we're doing, like if you haven't bonded to something, especially early on in the game, there'll be a tooltip that'll tell you to do it, right? That's one of the things. Like for a new player, everyone wants to know, like if you're a new player, how are you going to know all of these different things? If you don't put enough alluvials onto the board to match your level, then it'll tell you. If you haven't bonded, it'll tell you. That there's, if you have a bunch of augments lying around, it'll say, hey, you can put these onto alluvials, and it'll be a light touch. If you really like know your stuff in the game, you're probably never going to see these tooltips. But if you're a new player to the game, it'll really help you to understand. And one of the things that I think separates us from other games in a good way is, yes, primary and composite synergies can be a little bit to understand because there's more of them and stuff like that. But the variance between two players who have a certain amount of synergies open is going to be a lot smaller for us than others, because you're just naturally going to pick up some synergies. It's almost impossible not to, because there's only 5 primary affinities and 5 primary classes. So just by the nature of it, having those primary ones, you put a bunch of things on the board, you bond something at random, you're going to get some thresholds hit. Whereas in other games, if you just randomly put units on the board, there's far, far more chance that you're going to have no thresholds hit or very few. And to a new player, that can sort of be a little bit surprising. Like, well, why did that guy beat me? Well, because they had, 5 synergies, giving you bonuses. And for us, yes, a pro or a top level player is going to be able to know how to maximize that and all sorts of things like that. But the beginner is going to get some stuff on the board just by randomly throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks. Right? You'll definitely get some, and you'll be able to feel it. You'll see the VFX. A lot of them are a lot more prominent now in the new versions of the game, and you'll be able to go, okay, I saw what happened there. We're doing a lot more work on the quality of life of being able to hover over something and see what pops up, which units are part of which synergies and all those sort of things. So the onboarding for a new player should be significantly better than what it was.
It already is, honestly. Like, I told some people last night, like, imagine if we had, this version of Gauntlet, like, right now, like, even, like, 6 months ago. Like, it's in just such a better place, and I think people are having a great time already. Even with the small quality of life things we've done, it's in a much better place. I just want to say one more time for the people that have joined us during the live stream, this is like an arena focused town hall. We will have another one in the future, not too long, with Kieran and probably Aaron as well, about the MMO and roadmaps and all that stuff. But this town hall is mainly to be focused on the Arena Dev Blog and the improvements coming to Gauntlet. So I do see questions popping up on the different chats. But yeah, as I said, this is mostly to go over the Gauntlet and Arena focused stuff, and we'll have another one at a later date. But so I guess to continue now on this next feature, which is drone augments. And in this one, it does note that it's replacing legendary augment rounds. So yeah, like, how are these? Are we still going to have legendary augments? How are these drone augments? Is your drone going to become a more pivotal part of the fight now as well? Yeah.
So when we say that legendary augments is being replaced by drone augments, I just want to be really clear. We're not saying that the 2 features are the same. We're saying that timing is going to be replaced one for the other, right? And it'll look fairly similar. But what they do is completely different, right? Absolutely different. The general idea is that we want you to be able to upgrade your drone during the match. For anyone who doesn't know, the drone is literally the player in Arena. Yeah, the ranger is a character on the board, and yes, we're trying to make it configurable or whatever, but the ranger is not the one controlling everything. The drone is literally the one that's moving the pieces around the board. So I guess one of the differences between Overworld, the new MMO, and things like that compared to Arena is that in Arena, the player character is the drone, right? It doesn't feel like that at the moment because we disabled the movement system and stuff like that. That's all coming back. That'll be such a massive quality of life improvement to be able to, hover over to another player's drone and start spamming them with emotes and stuff like that. That's something that people will really love. But the drone is the star of this game. So what we want to allow people to do is to really change the way that you play. Some of the drone augments will be about economy, right? You'll get more credits each turn. You have a higher interest cap. You'll get higher chance of getting, higher tier units appearing in the shop earlier. All these sort of things. There's a bunch of them in there that are even related to, synergizing with a particular unit, right? They're basically a different dimension of gameplay. that we think people will really, really enjoy. And the replacement of legendaries, all that means is that legendaries are these very powerful augments for the alluvials. So now it could be that you get a drone augment that says, open up a legendary crate, and out of that legendary crate, you pick one of 4 legendary augments. So that's basically what we're talking about in terms of replacement. It's just the time window where it happens will match up, and then what you do inside of that period is completely different. Remember, a legendary augment is something that you put onto an alluvial. A drone augment is something that attaches to the drone to make the drone better. And people might say, well, what does that mean? The drone doesn't really do anything in the game. And all I'm trying to say is, like, the drone does everything in the game. So you might get one that makes you damage the opponent drone more, or heals your drone up every round. There's all sorts of ones that we would like to put in the game, and the ones that you get, again, are going to need to synergize with everything else that you do. It will be super easy to get into. Screen pops up, click one, done. You don't need to think about anything else. You just pick one and away you go. But to master it, you'll need to say, okay, well, what are the odds that I'm going to go into this sort of a composition? Therefore, do I want to pick the drone augment that's going to make my team, attack faster every round? Do I want to play the long game and pick one that says that I have to wait a few rounds and then we get a bunch of credits? There's all sorts of different things that we can throw in there, and that we plan on doing that. It's one of the first features that we're going to complete just after the regions, and we've already gone through a whole bunch of them and added them to the game. But we want to add a lot of these because there's got to be quite a bit of variety amongst the different ones, but they'll be huge for the different play styles. Right? I'm one of those people that really, really loves econ strategies. I would much prefer to hang around on a very, very low amount of drone health and then come back and win at the end. Doesn't always work, but I'm definitely more a first or an eighth sort of a player. There's other people that are definitely more, I just want to get top 4. That's usually the better strategy. But hey, we're all different in the way that we do it, and we want you to be able to express yourself differently in the game, while not just getting it be guaranteed that I can pick the same drone augments every time.
I'm typically the same way. I'm a kind of an all or nothing person, Like, I'm either going for it or I'm gonna lose trying. So I definitely understand that. A lot of this seems focused around, giving the player more choices, making sure the games aren't the same, they're not a repeatable experience every time, so
Mhm.
that's something super exciting to make, for different gameplay.
Uh, And they all need to act in different ways, right? Like it can't be that they're all just the same version of the same thing. The way that drone augments work is it's changing a thing that fundamentally can't be changed in other ways, right? To make your whole team more powerful, you either, like, you have to do some sort of a synergy thing or whatnot, but even that is mostly only limited to the synergies that you've got on the board, whereas drone augments can be like team wide. It can be about more damage, more credits. Like, you can't get these in most situations. I don't want to say never, but in almost any situation, these are exclusive to the drone, right? And that's the point of it, that these is a different way to play, a different way to express yourself than what it is to, configure your ranger and configure your alluvial teams, or, the augments that you put onto the alluvials, or even the region that you're playing in.
All right. Well, that's exciting, but I think this next one is honestly one of my favorites coming, which is the draft system with catch-up. And I'll let you explain it because I know what it is and a lot of other people might, but you can go ahead and explain how this is going to work and why we think it's needed.
Yep. So there's 2 things that this is designed to do. We're certainly not saying that we invented the wheel. We're hopefully just tweaking the wheel to make it roll a little bit better. The first thing that it's designed to do, bring everyone together, so that there is a sense of community, a sense of the match being with other people. One of the things that is not good about the game at the moment is it's very isolated. We are adding in some features before these new features go in that'll make it feel a little bit less isolated in terms of giving you a lot of notifications about what your opponents are doing when they level up, when they get a stage 2 unit, a stage 3 unit, hovering over them will tell you a bit about their composition and all sorts of stuff. These things we want to stay in the game even once all of this stuff is live, because they are quality of life improvements that should be there forever, right? So the opponent panel will be getting significant upgrades, but even if that gets every upgrade under the sun, the game is still going to feel a little bit empty until you and your opponents are able to walk around and talk to each other and flash up emotes and all that sort of stuff. But more important than that, we need to get the whole match, all 8 people, to get together and be able to see each other, see your drone skins, and see your emotes and stuff like that. The second thing is it is a way for the game to have a light catch-up mechanic, right? If you're losing, doesn't feel particularly good in a lot of these games. If you're lose streaking, yeah, you're getting some credits, but you're also losing health for it. If you're win streaking, you're getting just as many credits, but you're not losing any health for it. So win streaking is definitely the better way to go. We don't want this to be something where you're just forced to lose. So again, when I say a catch-up mechanic, I mean a real light catch-up. But what it allows you to do is there'll be a random selection of units. They'll have components on them. One of the things that's not gone into a heap of detail is exactly the way that the component system will work. But you might want a particular component, or you might want a particular alluvial, and it gives you a chance, because there's a variance there, to get what you want. One of the things that we would desperately want to do is make this catch up feel a bit more fair. So the general idea with it is that based on your health, that will determine the time at which you get released. If 2 people have the same health, it doesn't matter how many of them have the same drone health, you'll all be released simultaneously. If you've got slightly more health than someone else, you'll be released slightly after them. If you've got a heap more health than someone, you'll be released a long time after them. So you get a lot more time to choose what you want. There'll be obviously some fighting, because some of the things out there will be much more desirable than others. If there's a squiz out there, that probably is going to be more desirable than picking up an atlas. And it's the person who's coming last in the game that gets the opportunity. The other little thing that we've done to tweak it, again, like I said, we're not reinventing the wheel, we're just slightly tweaking it. The units will always travel towards the south. I know it doesn't show that in the concept art, but that's on me. That's that they'll always travel towards the south, and the player's health will determine where they are, and the players with the lowest health will be towards the south. So it's not a big thing at all, but if you're last, the units will be walking towards you. The interesting part about it is once they disappear through a portal, they'll reappear at the same color portal on the other side. So there is a little bit of, I'm sure there'll be some times where someone is running to get a unit and it'll disappear through the portal. Now it's on the other side, and that allows someone else who's on the other side to pick it up. So there will be a very, very tiny bit of skill involved in this to understand how fast you can walk, or how fast you can hover, really. And that'll help you determine, should I sit at the opening of the portal, or should I go and run and chase it before it gets through the portal? It's a very minor thing. Like I said, we're not tweaking a lot about it, but we hope it'll be fun. And this is something that we designed to fit into our universe a little bit better. It's definitely got much more of a sci-fi vibe to it. It utilizes some of the features that we've got from the
And
overworld,
so
and we think it'll be really
just to be
cool.
clear, so people know what you're talking about, it's going to be alluvials with some type of weapon component or a drone component, or what is that? It'll be an alluvial running around the draft system.
It'll
Okay,
it'll
yeah,
it'll have a component on its head. So a component is something that we haven't talked about. They don't exist in the current version of the game, but they will,
yeah.
and I guess we'll get into that in just
All
a
right.
sec.
So yeah, the next thing. Also, yeah, just to say, yeah, super excited about that feature. I really like the little portal things, how they're going to be kind of figure eighting around there instead of just going in a circle. So definitely exciting to see that. But yeah, the next thing to move on to is suit augments. So these are the upgrades to your ranger's suit, and yeah, we don't have these currently. So or kind of, I guess, currently in their the armor that we have, but.
So these are basically the equivalent to an alluvial augment, and because we don't want to overload people with lots and lots of choices, we decided for this one we want it to happen just once, right? Just once in the game, you'll get an opportunity to upgrade your suit. This caps off what your ranger is. And when you combine this with the particular weapon that you choose, who you're bonded to, the amplifiers for the weapons that you choose, this can make your ranger incredibly powerful. Now, I mean, some people aren't going to want the ranger to be the carry. They're going to want to make the ranger be much more of a support type or a tank or whatever. All of these options are available, but what it will do is it'll act as like a very strong augment. For those who aren't familiar, an augment is effectively like a passive that goes on top of your character to give them some extra functionality. And they are quite powerful. You'll get one appear at random, and you can take it if you want, or you can spend a credit and roll again. There will be quite a few of these. They are not unique to any particular suit. They're just all part of a giant pool. So some of them are very, very much focused about making your ranger be more of a brawler. I think in the image that we put in there, we had vampiric plating, which is about giving you a bit of tankiness and lifesteal. That would be perfect if you want to turn your character into a drain tank. You put them on the front line. They're not quite as tanky as some of the other suit amplifiers that you can get, but they make up for that tankiness by recovering a lot of health through lifesteal. And there's a bunch of these that we're putting into the game, quite a few. In fact, it'll be really hard to guarantee that you get the one that you want unless you're willing to spend a decent amount of credits, right? Put it this way: if you spend 50 credits, yeah, you'll probably likely see the one that you want, but spending 50 credits is probably going to be the difference between winning and losing. It's mean you're definitely making some sacrifices. So what we think will happen is most people will have a set of probably like 3 or 4 different amplifiers in mind that they want to use. And when they see any one of them, they'll take it. That's probably going to be the best play. But make no mistake about it, the choice that you make here will be super important. If you have picked your ranger to be absolute, like massive damage dealer, glass cannon sort of a build, and then you go for extra damage, you're making a choice, right? It could be that that's a really bad choice because maybe you're playing against a bunch of people that have got a bit of splash damage AoE, and in that case it could be that your glass cannon shatters 2 seconds into the battle every time, and it might have been the better play to pick up something that gave a little bit of tankiness to the ranger. Or it could be that that's just absolutely brilliant because you found a way to protect your ranger really, really well, and maximum damage is what the doctor ordered. All of these things are going to be super easy to understand. You have a look at it. They're all basic in terms of their effect. None of them have, 13 pages of text to understand. You don't need to go to university to be able to see what they're going to do. But you need to be able to understand the impact that they're going to have, and it will make a huge difference on your ranger and your team as well. They're not going to be things that are like drone augments, obviously. They're mainly going to be focused on the range themselves, because like we said, we want each of these choices to be something that inhabits a little bit of a different space.
Just to go back a little bit, so this will replace suit armor in general. It'll just be one choice in the game, and this is what that will replace. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. Cool. Just so
Correct.
everyone's clear. All right. Well, the next one, I guess I spoke a little bit too soon. I forgot this was in the blog, but yeah, this is a pretty cool one, which is the late game Leviathan combat. And some people have seen the Leviathans. They're massive creatures, that are part of the world. We don't know much about them currently, but yeah, they're going to be coming into the Gauntlet as late game fights.
Yep. For anyone who's asking, I know there's been a few questions about the time frame for these. Probably these ones are going to be a bit further down the line for a couple of reasons. Number one, the art team at the moment is largely focused on getting the mobile assets optimized so that we can get mobile out sooner. From that perspective, it's better for them to be working on that, because mobile is going to be a bigger impact than changing the PvE rounds that we have. And secondly, the PvE rounds are something that we can put in placeholders, and they're not going to do too much to the game. So these will be a little bit later, but they're going to be super fun. I know that I put in there Leviathan combat, but there's other things that we're putting in there as well, right? There are going to be a large number of PvE encounters that people play with a large amount of variety. And obviously, I don't want to give too much away about the MMO, but the point is that they will be from the world, they'll be from the MMO, and you'll start to see the world come to life. And obviously the MMO is where a lot of that is going to be, but this is just a cool way for us to tie it into the rest of the world. As far as what they do, the main thing that they do is instead of just dropping a straight augment or something like that, there'll be a variety of loot that these things drop to you. Everything from item components, which I think we can go into in a sec, all the way through to unit crates. So, I mean, we haven't actually named them yet. They might be unit orbs or something like that, but it could be that one of these drops, say, a random, tier 2, stage 2 character, and it'll just sit on your bench until you sell it. And when you sell it, something random will pop up. It could even be, if we want to give a little bit more, agency to the player, it might be a choice that pops up, very similar to the way that legendary augments will work. But we think that this will be a cool way for the player to build strong teams, because they'll merge together. If you get 3 stage 1 tier 5 orbs, then they'll merge together into a stage 2 version of it, so that then when you open it, instead of it just being you get 3 random units, you'll be guaranteed to get a stage 2 unit then, and that can be really, really powerful. So We think it'll be really cool, and it'll break up the game. They're not meant to be like the same as a normal round, but we do want the later ones to be incredibly hard, to the point where we definitely want to test some of the later ones being so hard that you're just always going to lose. And it comes down to, or at least you'll almost always lose. And the amount of loot that you get out of it will come down to like how long you can stay alive, how much damage you can do to it, so on and so forth. Again, we have to test it out with you guys. You guys might not like the idea that there's something that is most of the time going to beat you, but I think it's definitely a pretty fun way for the game to go ahead, because sometimes there's a composition that will do really well against other people, but it probably won't go so well against particular Leviathan, and that can add a little bit of randomness to the game as well. So I hope you guys like it. I would love to test it, but at the end of the day, if people want things to be easier, and that's the overwhelming sort of way that people look at it. And when I say easier, I don't mean simpler. I just mean like the fights are not as tough.
Yeah,
then
you
we
could
can
always
do
just
that as
use
well.
the test frog as well until Leviathans are ready to come in, you know.
Test frogs in the game,
Yeah.
I guarantee you. Right, I have already written that down. There will definitely be some Easter eggs. We haven't had much time to do Easter eggs in the past. It's time for some Easter eggs to come back. There's
Yeah.
there's going to be some fun stuff in
Well,
there.
so like you were saying, the next thing that you're gonna explain about is the itemization, meaning, you know, the components and how that's all gonna work. So, yeah, we'll let you just go into that one.
Yep. Yeah, so what we wanted to do is find a bit of a balance. One of the really cool things about TFT, and again, I got to give them props that they're an amazing team with amazing designers, is compared to other auto battlers out there, their itemization I think is quite cool, right? Dota Underlords is obviously a lot more simple, and I don't particularly like it. So we wanted to push for something that was similar to TFT, but at the same time, one of the tough things for new people in TFT is there's something like 64 different combinations of the item components. And when you get two components, you combine them together and that makes an item, and it's always the same. So the two things that we're looking to improve upon, and again, it's subjective whether or not they actually improve. We think that they will, but other people may disagree, is we didn't want it to be the case that it was so easy to get best augments for your alluvials. So if we went with that same idea where there's these components, then across the game with all the different drops that you get, you would be able to pick one or two of your units and get the best in slot every time. TFT's way around this is really just to say pros understand that it's better to slam something early, don't lose health, and go with items that are a bit crappy and be strong earlier, rather than holding off for a long time and waiting until you've got absolutely the best in slot. It tends to be a little bit of a noob trap to have people look up on a website and say, okay, for this alluvial, I'm supposed to have exactly this. And we don't want to get into that situation. So the way around it is not to have what we have now, which is just that you get augments and that's it. We want that's not enough choice. So we're looking to find that middle ground between having a heap of choice and getting sort of stuck in a noob trap, and having very little choice. What will happen is, just like the legendary augment crates, you'll combine two things together and it will instantly create and then effectively sell a crate. There's just a few types of item components in the game. So there's one for attack, there's one for defense, one for utility, and one for Omega. They're just going to be color coded. And then when you combine them together, depending on the combination that you combine together, you will get a subset of the augments in the game. So the augments are getting categorized based on whether or not they are attack, Omega, hybrid, brawler, etc., etc. There's a few different combinations there. So keeping roughly the same amount of augments in the game, but instead of it just being every once in a while you just get to pick one and it's fairly random what you get, you'll be able to tailor it down to the level of, I want something that is going to affect my attack, something that would be good for a fighter or a rogue, or you might want something that's going to be really good for utility, and you might put that onto a bulwark, whatever suits your team. But you won't be able to pick the perfect augment for that character, because there's probably going to be about 10 per category, and you'll get a choice of 3. So you're not going to get the exact one that you want every time, but you will get something equivalent that allows you to improve your attacks. That's what we feel is a good hybrid position. It's in the middle. It gives you some agency, but it also forces you to adapt a little bit as well. And we think it's going to be a pretty cool system that will really enhance the game. And then, as I said, there'll be other drops in there. Leviathan, battles are going to drop some really cool loot. It could be that they drop a bunch of credits. It could be that, like I said, they drop units. Leviathan have to eat something after all. And yeah, so with all those different items, I think it'll add a lot more variety to the game without getting it so stale that every single game, every Ramfire is going to have the same 2 augments on it every time. That doesn't interest us. We want you to have to make some tough choices, but we don't want you to feel like, I need to get something for Ramfire, and then what pops out are like 3 utility items, and you go, well, what the hell is that, right? Like that would be quite harsh. So you'll get something that fits, but it might not be the absolute best for your particular alluvial, and that might make you want to pivot a little bit. It could make you choose who you put it on. It could be that the carry that you thought you were going to use in the game maybe was going to be a tier 3 unit that you could quickly, level up to stage 3. And that causes you to pivot because maybe you've now got an item that is going to be really good on one of the, tier 5 characters in the game. So then you change up and you level up a bit quicker and start looking for that unit instead. Good players will, take advantage of this, and new players won't be confused at all because you'll get something that works for the character that you want to put it on, and you won't fall into that noob trap where you put something that is just totally not worth it.
One of the best things I think TFT did was, well, like their weapon system or component system was so confusing to me when I first started playing it, because they didn't have like those little tooltips, like, oh, if you combine these 2 things, you're going to get this. And once they fixed that, it made the game much more enjoyable for me. But for what you're saying, ours is going to be even simpler than that, in the fact that you'll only have a few options to combine those things into, and then that affects your next drone decision.
Yeah. There's not going to be that many, and they'll be themed. So if you want something, if that you want to be having really powerful Omegas, or casting them frequently, et cetera, then just combine 2 blues together, and an option will pop up with. I think we're going to have 4 in there, but it could be 3. I don't know. But yeah, you'll have 4 things that pop up that will enhance your Omegas. And so it might not be the exact one that you want for your exact composition, but if doing a lot or powerful Omegas is your thing, then you'll get something for that. So it should be a lot more understandable. You won't need to memorize quite as much if you're a new player. But at the same time, there's all the same, stuff in there for the pros, and even more so the pros will have to understand how to navigate that space a bit better, because like I said, you won't be able to just auto get best in slot every time.
Just one question I think is kind of relevant. We're talking about this. Will the benching to remove augments stay, or do you know, is that planned to stay, or will we get some sort of magnetic remover instead?
I don't like the idea of having an item that you have to use on them to take it off. I think it's better to have that in the UI so that it's a lot easier, but it'll have the effect of a magnetic remover. So like for example, the reason why it exists in TFT is because you can't just pop things off by default. So like there's no way for them to have put that into a user interface where it would be a lot more intuitive and simple. Instead, it has to be an item because it's not the normal thing. Right. And so even in modes where it is the normal thing, they can't just go and change the whole user interface. So that's why they have such a thing as the magnetic remover. Assuming that we're going to keep that ability for you to adjust exactly as you want, there's no need for us to make something more complicated than what it has to be. So the user interface should be very, very simple.
Yeah. I like being able to just bench and quickly swap, because I often make mistakes. So,
yeah, I mean, it could be that we just allow you to just drag and drop straight off of the UI showing the augments. We're still going through some details about quality of life, but at the end of the day, if we end up with this, the reason why we haven't put a lot of focus into it is because we want to make sure that we don't want to punish you for slamming things early. That might end up being a bad decision, but once we've got enough testing, if people really love the idea of that configurability, which so far it seems to be the case, once we know 100% that that's going to be like a staple of our game that separates it, we'll make sure that we have the simplest interface so that it's not at all complicated. A new person to the game should be absolutely dead set. Like it should be obvious what to do. And I think probably the most obvious thing is just you can either click on it or drag it straight off of the unit and put it onto something else. That's probably the easiest way to go. If anyone else has any other suggestions, we're open to it. But at the same time, benching it might also pop it off so that there's a few different ways of doing the same thing.
All right. We got a few more to go through here, and then we have answered a lot of the questions. There's a few I don't think we have, but the next one is this team planner, and I'm not exactly sure how this is all going to work. I get the basic idea, but I think a good explanation of how this is going to be integrated would be.
Have you
no, I
played
haven't
with
seen
it internally
yet. No. It's
Okay,
on
it's
the internal
it's
build. I'll have
live
to go
now
check it out.
internally,
Yeah.
so you can give it a shot. Yeah. So this is an interesting one. I remember speaking to Kieran about this. One of the things that we had always planned was to have a team planner in the game. And I think one of the issues that people have had with the way that suits and weapons are in the game is because they don't have this team planner. If we had launched the team planner before that, I think that it would have been received a lot better. Now, that doesn't mean that I think that it's the best way to go forward. I think what we're doing is definitely better. But this is a massive quality of life improvement. The main point of this is at any given time in the game, you can effectively tell the user interface, notify me when I get the right units. So you open up a panel and you pop in the units that you think would fit for your team. And then as you're refreshing your shop, you'll get a big icon that says, "Oi, this is one of the one that's on your team composition. You should buy it." It is a huge upgrade. The funniest thing is I was speaking to Kieran about this and saying it's going to be really cool, and he was like, "What is it?" And I thought everybody knew about it, but he was like, "Oh my god, that is going to be such an improvement," because he'd never used anything like it. I spend a lot of my time in the team planner adjusting the composition. It has a few features. Like I said, the main thing is you pop the units into it, and then it will notify you as you roll in the shop, hey, you should probably buy this. So it makes it way faster to pick your units. But it does a few other things for you as well. It will tell you, if you get all of these units, this is what your synergies will look like. We obviously will need to do some upgrades to add in the Ranger and a few other bits and pieces as we go, the bonds, blah, blah, blah. But at least for the moment, it's going to give you a rough idea of what your composition is going to be. How are you going to get, 4 Revenant or whatever it happens to be. So you just build your team inside of there, and then as you're playing through the game, it'll notify you when you need to buy those units. It's not making it more likely that they appear in the shop or anything like that, but it does allow you to see what is available a lot more quickly. The second thing that it does, and this will be a huge quality of life for us, this doesn't affect games that aren't, I guess, NFT based or anything like that, is it will allow you to select which instance of the characters that you have, the Illuvials, so that you know which one is going to level up and which one you're playing in Leviathan, right? You might have 6 Atlases, and we allow you to pick the one that you want to level up and the one that you want to use its traits from. So instead of it, like at the moment, there's an algorithm that just basically picks the highest TPI. That will no longer be the case. I mean, it's a pretty good approximation of it, but you might not want to use that one because maybe you're just playing the game to level things up, right? It might be that you're trying to just level them up for whatever reason. Obviously, leveling up is going to be a lot more important in the overworld or in any other games we build, and this will allow you to configure that. So for some people that don't have any ownership, you won't even see it. It won't give you the option to select those things. But if it notices that you actually do own Illuvials, then it'll notify you that you can pick the particular instance. Again, an instance is just one NFT versus one type. And it'll allow you to configure all of those things. Because it's happening in-game, you're much more engaged with the game while you're doing it. It's not like the team planner was for Ascendant, where it gets a little bit boring because you're sitting there doing it without playing the game. In this, what you're really trying to do is to theory craft as the match goes on. The best way to use it is not to just say, this is the team comp that I want. It's to say, okay, this is what I have been given across the match. These are the choices that I made, the drone augments. This is who I think I'm bonding, blah, blah, blah. And then you might tweak it. And in other games, that doesn't really work because the synergy system in a lot of the other games is very binary, right? There's just affinities and classes, and there's a lot of time not much overlap between them. And so there are very clear comps that you want to play, right? And at the moment in our game, there are some comps that you want to play, but in general, there's a lot more in our game because they merge together so much because there's the primary and the composite. There's way more options that are very close to the strength of other comps. And because of that, you can really say, okay, well, I got a lot of this unit. It appeared in my shop. Yes, it's not in my ideal composition, but it's within 1%, and I got this unit, so it's actually much, much more important for me to play this. So for a pro player, the expectation is that they'll be able to pivot and adjust the comp a lot more than they will in other games. And if you talk to people, even at high level players in other games, there are very strict, like 5 or 6 comps that are good to play, and everything else is, go eighth. For us, there should be hundreds of comps that are all reasonably similar in power, at least enough so that the randomness of your shop should determine what you should go for. It should never be the case that someone playing our game at a high level is just donkey rolling because they know this is the best composition and they're just waiting for it. And if they get unlucky, they just go, well, I'm screwed and I'm going eighth. Something is going to appear in your shop and you should be able to, pivot to what the game gave you.
Yeah. People are hating on me because I keep beating them with the same comp, but all they have to do is use my comp if it's so good, right? uh
Or pick something that's going to beat it hyperwise. But I mean, the reason why some comps are stronger than others at the moment is because at the moment we're doing some balancing, but you got to remember that like internally we're playing a very different version of the game than you guys. So there's there wasn't as much time put into the balancing. There's other things that we didn't talk about in the blog that we're doing to improve the balancing even further. So the expectation is within a couple of months, there'll be lots of compositions that are viable, and it'll totally depend on what the game has thrown you. And it'll be your job to say, okay, game, you gave me this. This is my best
and so
way of
will
dealing
this
with what you
be
gave me.
obviously, like I said, I haven't tried it yet, but is the plan for this to only be once you're in the match, or like maybe while you're queuing, or you're, on the web, or just in the match?
Oh yeah, we'll have it available offline as well eventually. At the moment, it's just in game, but we do want to have it everywhere. I believe that we're working on the online version now, but I've been so focused on the game side of Arena that I haven't focused enough on the onboarding side. But if not, it'll definitely be there reasonably soon. But the point is that it's not, for our game, it's not that beneficial to be mucking around with it outside. Yes, you can save comps, you can do all sorts of things, you can name them and so on and so forth, and put them in order. And then when you go into the game, you'll have a bunch of comps that you can choose between that you might want to play. I don't think that that's particularly interesting because, as I said, the ideal comp for you is probably going to change every game based on what's coming up in the shop. If you manage to find a bunch of fiery at early levels of the game, and you are planning on going some completely other comp, you should probably pivot and pick what you've got. At least that's what the top players will do. But for the noobs like myself, you'll get comps that you really love, and you'll just play what you enjoy, and that's totally fine too.
All right, moving on to one of these last subjects on here, at least. And this kind of ties into a few things, which is match scouting. So, yeah, this ties into multiplayer, and there's questions around multiplayer. I don't know how in depth you want to go into that, but yeah, match scouting and what that is. I know some people know.
I,
Yeah.
I'll just touch on it really briefly. There's probably not many people that want to like think too hard about the internals of our engine, but we're overhauling the engine so that this is possible. At the moment, like I said, the only scouting that you can do is via notifications in your opponent drone health panel, and on live there's really nothing much there. There's a lot more on our internal builds that is going out soon to make scouting a bit better. But really, you want to be able to go and watch other matches. You want to be able to walk onto someone, or hover onto someone else's board and annoy them, and talk with people and stuff like that. So in addition to all the enhancements that we're doing, so that while you're looking at your own board, you're still informed of what's going on in the match, you should be able to look at everybody else's match. By updating the engine, this is one of the major things that we get effectively for free that would have been very hard to do with the other way that we were building the game. It has taken a bit of time to get this done, and it was a tough decision because obviously it's a lot of resources towards doing something that fairly minor in terms of the features or at least the mechanics of the game, but it's huge in terms of the feel. So we just have to do it.
Okay. And that, I mean, I guess you probably don't want to comment on how far out multiplayer looks right now. Like, do you? I didn't hear you mention it, but if you do want,
Mhm. Yeah. So a few of the questions have come about the timeline. Like I said, these will definitely be staggered updates. The first big update will come with some features, because remember that there's one group of the team that are working on the overhaul of the engine. They're very far into that. The expectation is that that will drop in March. So we're not too far away from that. But at the same time, like I said, there's people working on the team planner. The team planner is already live internally, so that'll be pretty soon. There are other features that are coming out before the upgrade to multiplayer, because, like I said, there's other people working on those features. But there will be a decent amount of features that come out with that. I mean, the game is already multiplayer now. So when we say multiplayer, we're not saying like it's a single player game and this will be multiplayer. We're talking about the engine overhaul to make a lot of those things work a lot better. So the first big update will be in March, and it will have the ability to move around, watch other matches and stuff like that, plus a couple of the features. Probably the main one will be regions, which we think is the sort of update that is not going to impact so much the other ones. It doesn't require them, so it should just be a fun, valid and really cool update to the game. And then the month after, there'll be probably the bulk of the changes done. And by May, we should be at the point where we're just polishing off everything and getting it right. The timelines, we're definitely getting a lot better at knowing what's going on with it, because the whole team is focused on this. So there's less chances of being, big curveballs thrown to us and stuff like that. We don't know to the day or anything like that, but that's the expectation for the next 3 big updates. Is the main engine overhaul with 1 or 2 features, then most of the other features, and then the final month after that will be mostly polish and possibly 1 more feature to go in. It could be that we get all of them in one go. If they're ready, then we'll release them. And the only other question is, will we put them on to test service first? I'd really like to bypass it, because at the moment I'd like to think that the whole community is just testing these things, and we don't want to gate it to be people that have to like open up a different version of the game. And probably testnet will be something that we start to use a lot more once all the features are in and we've got the player base up to a healthy level. At that point, we'll probably then give the diehards access to testnet, and they can see the features before everyone else does. But for now, we don't see a lot of reason to do that, unless we think that there's going to be a bunch of bugs. But I mean, we wouldn't release it to you if we think that there's going to be a lot of bugs. That's something that we have definitely gotten a lot better at in the last couple of months. So you'll see the quality of each release should go up exponentially, and you shouldn't have those same teething issues that you had in the past, which obviously we apologize for.
Okay. Well, I mean, we've covered pretty much the entire blog. Like I said, if you guys want to read that blog, it's in our news section. One thing that I know there was a few questions about is the actual Leviathan mode. So I guess from leveling alluvials, like how important are leveling alluvials going to be in the future, or how do you even see Leviathan mode playing out in the future?
One of the things that we're looking at the moment, and this is really going to come down to quality of life, understanding the game, et cetera, is while it's definitely a good idea, or at least in theory, it's cool to be able to say that the power of your alluvials is going to come from both leveling and their traits. We do need to do a bit of testing and see if that's too complicated for people. If it turns out that it's too complicated for people, then we'd probably remove leveling as a power thing, and instead it would just be a bonus for people playing Arena to give something extra power in the other parts of the game. I don't like that, but at the same time, I tend to always be on the side of maybe a bit more complexity and a little bit more nuance between things. And I'm often wrong, and that the community prefers something to be much more simple. So we'll have to look at feedback on that and see whether or not we just make it traits. If traits became the only thing, then obviously one of the advantages of that is when looking at alluvials to bring into the Leviathan mode, you just need to look at the traits and that's it. It might be that people much prefer to keep leveling in there, and if so, then we'll keep it. But it's not set in stone. Is the point? We do need to have a little bit of more testing on that. As far as like Leviathan in general, one of the other the things we're, I guess, debating at the moment is how much of the Leviathan version of the game do we want to be in the vanilla version of the game. So for example, one of the advantages with Leviathan is if you own an alluvial, you'll see it with a finish. You'll either see it as a shiny finish if you own it, or a hollow or a dark hollow if you have those. And again, the team planner will allow you to select that one. So if you want to see that dark hollow one, even if it's got slightly lower traits than your hollow version of it, you can do that just to flex and show that you have it. But that is something that I think will be really cool and will differentiate us from other games. It'll mean that cosmetically you can show that you've got some really cool stuff. Whether or not we put that into the vanilla version is a big question. I'm pushing for it. I know that there's other people that are not, because they want to keep it simple, and that if a new person to the game comes in and they see Ramfire and then someone else has a Ramfire but it's a different color, it might impact them and say is it different from a power perspective when it's not, and that could be a little bit confusing. And it could also be like, hey, why does that person have that? I think it's a good way to get people into the crypto side of the ecosystem, because they'll have to ask hey, how did you get that? And someone could say, I bought it on the exchange, or I captured it in the overworld, blah blah blah. But we're not sure what's the best option to go with there. For now, we're keeping the vanilla version very, very much separated. But
yeah,
who knows?
I mean,
what
I
will
will
happen
say
in the
I'm
future.
for it totally. We played Leviathan last week and this week some, and I did miss seeing the dark hollows and the hollows. So I think it is. Yeah,
Well, I
no, but
mean,
I
in
mean,
Leviathan, it's
playing in the
it's
other
going to be
version though,
there.
it's
It's
like you forget that you have them, and then once we played some Leviathan, it was like, okay,
Mhm.
now I see Foxbeard, like these other guys that have tons of dark hollows, like Winnie and yeah, Foxbeard, all these guys. So
We'll get a lot of play testing, but the first thing is that we're going to have a major marketing campaign for once we get the vanilla version into a really good state. Once Gauntlet is played by you guys and you're loving it, we're going to bring on a lot more players to test it out. And if you guys are loving it, then we believe that these new players will love it too. And we're hoping that can sort of bootstrap the player base and move it up and up and up. And then from there, we'll have a lot more data to test out whether or not we should bring some of those features over to the vanilla version. Obviously, there's never going to be anything in the vanilla version of the game that gives you more power for owning something, because that's the whole point of it. It shouldn't be pay to win. But at the same time, cosmetics are not pay to win. And it just comes down to, does it add more confusion to the game, or does it allow a bit more expression and people enjoy it? We'll have to see.
all right. I mean, I think There's one other question. This one's from Scoriox. I think everything else has pretty much been covered through mostly everything we talked about, at least that I can see. Um, at least Gauntlet and Arena related. How about Scoriox asks, like how will you get, how will Gauntlet remain exciting? Like, will we do seasonal changes to, the regions, the drone augments,
Mhm.
leviathans, and then also even alluvial sets?
Yeah, so obviously the main one is alluvial sets. It was always the case that we were going to spend a lot longer on the first set than all the others, because once you commit to a set, you know, it's a crypto-based game that once they're out there, and we need to make sure that they're really balanced. Even in the first set, with all the changes that we've made between Ascendant and Gauntlet, it's definitely the case that we need to patch some holes in the game and adjust some things to make it a bit better from a perspective of the alluvials that we have. So the major one is obviously going to be a lot faster updates for the alluvial sets. Remember, these sets are not going to have all completely new ones. Remember, we went absolutely nuts making 206 alluvials that are all like very different from each other, all sorts of different animations and skeletal systems, and it was insane, and we probably shouldn't have done it, but we did. The next sets will be a lot more modest so that we can get it out to you a lot faster. So you'll see variations on alluvials, and they will be much quicker for us to build because it'll be mostly the game design team adjusting them rather than, uh, you know, rather than it being something that the artists have to go through and make a whole new creature. There obviously will be new creatures. It's not going to be 206, I can tell you that. That's one of the major ways that we're going to differentiate it. There will be other features that we add to the game. Like I said, if something that we do proves to be super popular and it's like a choice in the game or a randomness that comes up, it could be that later on that becomes part of the staple of the game. So the best example would be, let's say we give you a legendary augment crate at the start of the game as part of one of the regions, and then everyone starts voting on that and says, we just love that. Everybody needs to start with a legendary. It might be that we end up just incorporating that. That just becomes the default nature of the game. That will obviously change and it'll evolve over time. There's going to be season passes, battle passes, that sort of thing that entice people to get particular, unique cosmetics and stuff like that. There's a lot of those things that we're planning that we couldn't before because we had a smaller team working on Arena. Now we've got a lot of people working on it, so we can get a lot of stuff done. And then, like I said, even though it'll go into more of a maintenance mode, they'll still be working on balance. There'll still be people working on new features and stuff like that. We do work fast. It's just that, we have made some mistakes in terms of the way we tooled the engine from the beginning. And once we get out of that sort of rut, things will move a lot faster, even if we have a smaller team. That I can assure you.
And no question from my end that everyone works insanely hard here. Crazy hours people put in. So, but yeah, shout out to the team,
They definitely do.
But yeah, I think that covers everything that we wanted to hear at least. And as I said, this was an arena focused, town hall, and we will have another one soon with Kieran, and we'll answer some other things based on MMO and all your other questions there. You have any final?
Yep.
Yeah.
There's a lot of cool things happening in the background. I can't talk about it right now, but I think that you guys are going to be pretty excited for the things that we're doing for the MMO, right? It's definitely more of a long-term vision. It's not something that's going to pop up tomorrow, but we've already shown. I don't know how it's leaked or whether or not it was something on purpose, but you've already seen some of the combat, some of the internal prototyping that we've done. we have some really fun stuff that's all going to be incorporated into this MMO. I mean, we're definitely calling it an MMO light because make no mistake about it, we're not like recreating World of Warcraft in a year. That's insane. But we will have something that'll make everyone sort of see what it is that we can do. And we've learned a lot over the last 3 years in terms of how we work, how our team works. All of that goes together to just make us more efficient, right? I wish that from the beginning we hadn't made any mistakes, but the fact of the matter is that we did, I did, and there's no going back from that. But what we can do is make sure to not make those mistakes in the future and come up with better processes and things like that. So one of those things is to not spread ourselves too thin. And that's why I say we're going to get Arena to a really good state. It'll go into a bit of a maintenance mode until we can get a large player base. Once it's self-sustaining, we'll get a much larger team to be working on it, and their entire job will be to just work on Arena. But while we have a smaller team, their entire job will be working on the MMO, and by everybody focused on one particular thing, we'll move a lot faster than we have in the past.
I'm looking forward to it, definitely. But yeah, so I guess we'll wrap it up there. Aaron, I appreciate you doing this, and I know everybody else does. You know, they some people were worried you were disappeared. You know, even though I hear from you or see you often, so I assured them you weren't, and here you are. So good to have you here.
Well, for the records, I just I don't know. I think some people might enjoy some of the stuff that I talk about, but for myself personally, I don't particularly love, you know, being out in the public quite as much. Not that I hate it or anything like that, but I'd rather leave that to other people to do. I don't say no to like AMAs and things like that. I just don't get asked about it as often. And when it comes to things like the dev blogs and stuff like that, one of the main things that has affected that is we've looked at other ways that are a bit more exciting. Me personally, I find the dev blogs to be fairly boring. They're not the sort of things that can be made a lot better. And so I've been pushing very heavily to move it to, say, like a video format. And that would be really great. But as we've tried to streamline the team and stuff like that, it's just not feasible to like go full on hardcore and have a bunch of people make a really cool, you know, say 10-minute video and stuff like that. The choice has always been just get everyone's head down and building stuff. And yet I get it. It can feel a little bit isolating when you're not hearing from people and stuff like that. But I'll try to be better at answering people inside of the community. I don't shy away from answering people inside of the different channels and stuff. But one of the things that has been a pushback is people say, you know, we never give them any information, all while I'll have answered the same question 800 times. Right. But the problem is that I'm answering it to an individual who is asking me the question, you know, inside one of the channels rather than it coming from one of the official things. Sometimes it is in the official things and people just haven't read it. So it's really hard to get a win on that sort of stuff. I'm open to ideas, but at the end of the day, I think people need to at least be aware that anytime we're doing, you know, community outreach and stuff like that, we're not working on the game, and that sometimes makes us feel guilty because it's cool to, you know, speak with you guys and stuff like that, but you know, in an hour I could flesh out, you know, more of the features or add in an extra couple of you know, drone augments or whatever it is, and we do need to be mindful of that balance. But if people do get a kick out of you know, hearing me speak, I don't understand why, but I'm happy to do it. I know that I've got a much more like I'll go into more of a deep dive with Paz next week on an AMA. I don't say no to AMAs usually. It's just that very few people ask me for them. So I've taken that as I'm better off internal with the team than I am external with the community,
Yeah,
and
no,
that's fair
I mean,
enough.
I hear it personally. Like, there's people that like to hear from you, and there's people that like to hear from Kieran. So, it's definitely either or and both, type of thing. But yeah, all you got to do is ask him. So yeah, and then I guess just a few more things before we cut this off. Yeah, we'll be doing. Kieran's gonna do a
Mhm.
what's the word, trivia thing tonight in about 8 hours. He's going to be doing that. He'll have some giveaways for you guys, so that'll be a super hard trivia. It won't be easy as usual, and we'll probably do a gauntlet tournament after that. And then I think we're going to go ahead and test this. We kind of brought back, I'm trying to bring back internal game nights for the team, because when I first joined the team we were doing TFT, and obviously now we can do the Gauntlet. So I'm going to start that back up. And Stuart suggested we do it in public voice channels. So hopefully we're going to do that tomorrow in about 12 hours, basically. And you'll be able to interact with some of the team, while we play Gauntlet. And yeah, I think it'll be an interesting, fun event. We'll see how it goes the first time. And you'll be able to see a bunch of team members that don't typically play. I already had team members messaging me like, "How do I prepare for playing Gauntlet?" Because some of them aren't very good at it. So you guys could even coach up some of the team there at this event. So yeah, I want to say thank you again to everybody for coming out. And this is recorded. You guys can go back and watch it. And yeah, thank you again, Aaron, for coming.
No worries, thank you. Hopefully, I haven't inadvertently let out a bunch of leaks that I didn't mean to. uh, if I did,
Yeah,
then
no,
you
I
guys
don't
will
think
have to
anyone
keep
would
it to
ever complain.
yourselves.
But all right.